What is up, YouTube? And now it's been about 3 or 4 days after Kokardi and Aya's banner has released, and I just want to talk about my final thoughts about these characters. So both of these characters, they are new, so a lot of people were testing them, and I did some extensive testing. I even latticed both of these characters. I maxed out Aya's S2 and almost maxed out her S1. And then, as you guys probably know, I pretty much fully maxed out Kokardi, and I've been testing them pretty much everywhere for both PvE and PvP. And I think both characters are decent, but not as good as people might think, and also not as bad as people might think, because I think a lot of people have written these characters off, but they're decent. And I think, honestly, at the state that they're released in, it's a good thing for the game, because they're not, like, overbearingly broken, but not, like, completely useless either. So let's actually talk about both characters. I just want to show you guys, or not show you guys, but tell you guys my thoughts. So Kokardi basically was meant to be a bruiser DPS. He has this passive where he's, like, pretty much untargetable and stealth. And what I didn't know, or I think, like, most people didn't know, because from other games it doesn't work like this, but because he's untargetable, he can't get countered, which makes him extremely good. So for single target counterattacks, he can't get countered, which is very powerful. And he also has this ramping up Calamity Flame, and every other turn he attacks on his turn, he does an AoE attack, which will also push your entire team's turn meter. He also does like this S3, which does AoE damage, also gives him crit rate buff, so he doesn't really need to have anything above 70% crit. And he also gives Calamity Flame to himself, and he has his S1, which also gives him more stacks. So basically, when you look at his kit, he looks like a ramping, damage dealer that, will eventually start one-shotting things. The thing is, even though he's very good in long fights, and even though he does actually do a lot of damage if you ramp it up, however, the core problem with this is, I think if you released last season, he'd be like really good, but because the Etheria effect scales up super fast, he doesn't get as much value out of this. And what I mean by that is that because Etheria effect is scaling so quickly, he is supposed to be like this one scaling character that is supposed to just outscale everything. Well, every other unit is scaling super fast damage-wise too. And the reason why that's bad for him, even if you might be thinking, oh, he's just going to do extra damage, it's because he's really squishy. His base HP is pretty low, so late game, if you actually go against even like a Holden S3, you can get like actually one shot. It's actually pretty ridiculous. For example, if you're going against like Lily Holden and Lily crit damage buffs Holden and Holden S3s, you die at like 4 Ethereum level effects. He is a very squishy character, and it does make sense because he's unable to be targeted why he's squishy. If he was tanky, he'd be like giga busted, but you just have to keep that in mind when you're playing him. So I think in terms of like PvP, he's a decent like counter pick. You pick him like 4-5. You can even lock him on 3 if they pick too many green bruisers. He's very good into Mizuki and Rahu. However, the thing is, you have to realize Mizuki and Rahu actually have AoE, and they can actually kill him later, which is pretty scary. So because of that, pretty decent character. If you're against like a team with only one AoE, he's pretty decent, but if you have too much AoE against him, he kind of just gets shut down. For PvE content, I've been testing him, not that great. You can use him in Sharon, you can use him in Teramaton, and you can use him in Rengokutsu, but for the most part, it's like, why would you ever use him over other characters, right? So I don't really think for newer players he's worth investing into. Should you pull for him? If you want, I guess, but honestly, I think he's a character that you can skip. But he might get buffed in the future, so you never know. Now, in terms of Aya, so Aya is, in my opinion, the better of the two. And the reason is because even though she's not really used in PvE content, because she really relies on your team getting debuffed, she's really good as a replacement for like Doki Doki. I don't think she's as good, to be honest, because the thing with Doki Doki is that Doki Doki can cleanse with it not being her turn. So you guys probably already know, but Doki Doki works by buffing herself. And when an ally takes a turn, if they have a debuff, you can see that before they take action, she will consume a stack off herself and purify 3 debuffs. So Doki Doki can cleanse her allies without it even being her turn. Aya, it actually needs to be her turn, and she needs to end the turn. And also, she only purifies 1 debuff, while Doki Doki purifies 3. The upside, though, is if you max this out, you can actually purify debuffs even if you're CC'd as Aya at the end of your turn. So if you get opened on and you get like, Heinrich into CC'd, you could still dispel with Aya, but the thing is, like, the debuff purifying is so low. I think this should have been 2. Maybe that would have made her super OP, probably, but against full control teams, she can still get overwhelmed. So you can't like just slam her into like full CC teams. You can only pick her into like teams with not too many debuffs, which makes her feel a little bit weird, but she's an okay option against CC. The biggest thing is her S3. So her S3, it's an AoE turn meter push by 40%. This is ridiculously powerful. And you're also going to see that it also reduces your team's shell and just CDs in general. So the people using her right now in RTA are actually using her with like Rahu and like Holden and Mizuki. And the reason why is because you're going to have Aya go before them. And if you S3, which you will on the opener because you want to push them up anyways, you'll end up reducing their Artisan cooldown. And Artisan innately starts with a 1-turn cooldown. So you can activate Artisan on the opener and it gives you a fat shield for an extra turn. But the biggest thing is you get that extra damage on defense scalers. So she's really good with Artisan users. She also is good because whenever anyone dies, this gets pushed back by 2 turns, or like the cooldown goes down by 2 turns. And if this is off CD basically, you'll be able to push up as well. So it's a very, very strong. She's a very good revenge killer, and because of that, she could push your team up, reduce their cooldowns whenever a unit dies, and you can revenge kill, or you can kind of snowball really hard. So very strong character. Her S1's also very good because you can reduce the cooldown of your S3 with RNG. Surprise, surprise, we're playing an RNG game. But overall, she's a pretty solid character for PvP, and she's very good for like every single playstyle. The only thing is like the playstyle that you have to use with her is pretty weird, even with like, especially with bruisers, because you have to play like very aggressive and you have to play with artisans. For PvE content, I found not really much success with her. I think, like I said earlier, debuffs, it's too inconsistent to intentionally get debuffed. But yeah, I don't think she's really a PvE character. I think both of these banners are strictly for PvP, which is kind of weird to me because we have the global launch with a lot of new players coming back and new players starting the game, especially for Asia, right? For like Korea, China, and Japan. And there's like 2 banners that are strictly for PvP. So I'm not really too sure about that, but it is their decision. I think the only downside I'd say about both these characters is they're very lattice hungry. Like Aya honestly wants to be maxed out eventually because every single you want to max out her S2 for sure for the ability to dispel when you're CC'd as well. So like this is a must-have, the S2, and then you really want the S1 because you really rely on taking a lot of turns. You want the speed, and then you also want her S3 because her S3 is such a broken ability, so you want that cooldown reduction. So very lattice hungry. I think if you do max her, she's actually going to be super powerful, maybe borderline OP. But in this lattice economy, it's pretty hard to blindly invest into stuff. I don't want to say screwed over by maxing Kokardi, but I definitely regret it. I really wish I put these lattices into something useful, like Veronica, for example, which I still don't have the shell for, which is very, very funny after 8 weeks almost. Or even like maxing out my Celine because she's just a broken unit right now. So yeah, pretty much it for this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think about both the units, and I'll see you guys next video.